Show that I'm a little more optimistic than the other person. Okay, so quick one about me. My name is Tadeo. I'm the facilitator for the Data Insights Core Unit at MakerDAO. I joined as a community member at the end of 2020, meaning that I looked at the forum, I took a couple of calls, and eventually started doing little jobs for them through 2021, finishing at the end of it being a full-time contributor, and then by around half of this year, leading the Data Insights. Little preface about Maker. So what is MakerDAO? Let me first talk about the protocol, which is what most people should know about. Maker protocol essentially manages the stablecoin DAI. It's a fully decentralized, censorship persistent token people can use to pay others. I know there's low opinions about this, so I want to hear about it. And this is done mainly through over-collateralized loans of crypto collateral. Again, there's a lot of nuance here, there's new ways of doing it, we can also get into that. But today I'm actually going to be talking about the other side, the organization. So MakerDAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. It's basically just the people, the community that essentially work or contribute to the protocol on a daily basis. There's better definitions, I guess. Quick overview of the stakeholders at Maker. You have in the middle the MCB, the multi-collateralized system protocol. You have the I have the data. Yes, I do. Nice. Okay, so you have NCAR holders, people that hold the NCAR token, vote, and basically have an ownership of the protocol and the decisions being made. You have the workforce, we call them core units. Essentially, they're teams that you can imagine them as either contractors or very independent teams within a traditional organization, I guess. And then you have users on that side. I've simplified them into users of the stablecoin and then users of the over-collateralized lending. Those are usually mediated by partners, meaning that users don't actually interact with the system directly. They do it through partners such as Oasis app, DeFi Saver, basically any app that you use that you can actually execute something DAI. Essentially, we consider it a partner. Superfluid, for example, can create a payment stream using DAI. Okay, and then this is just a topic of its own, but we have delegates. These are people that have been delegated their care by the holders and actually get paid by the system to make decisions on a daily basis, be essentially full-time decision makers. All right, so that's more or less setting the stage for the organization side, and then communication tools. I looked that well, but pretty standard how you look at a DAO. Essentially, you have a forum over here where the main discussions are happening. Everyone's free to join, everyone's free to post or comment on whatever they want. Then you have Discord over here, same idea. And then finally, you have here basically just public calls. My experience as a full-time contributor compared to a community member in terms of communication is pretty much the same. I think the only difference here is that I have a couple of like private chats in that Discord, but that's pretty much it. Like, it's very open. So basically, you walk in tomorrow, you see when you look at all these things, it's essentially what I see on a daily basis. And just as a note, although we have one server, Discord server for Maker, all these are still somewhat related servers from different core units or different partners that I have the joy of also participating in. All right. A quick primer on how decisions are made at MakerDAO, or essentially how we do governance. Essentially starts with discussions through different channels, the forum, the Discord, just having a conversation with someone. That gets kind of formalized into a forum post where you use a improvement proposal, we call them MIPS. Essentially, you formally say what change you want in the system. You can be on the protocol side, you can be on the organizational side. So it can be, I want to change the interest rate from 3% to 2%. And here's my rationale. It can also be, I want to onboard a new team or offboard an existing team. And this, again, this is my rationale. That gets voted on the forum. We take a sentiment poll. Essentially, anyone who's joined the forum has had a minimum level of activity can vote on this. Once that gets passed, we go on chain. And this is only NKR holders that can vote. Again, here mostly the delegates on ratifying that decision. Usually we do yes or no rejection. We also do rank polling, basically showing the prioritization of how you want the decision making. All right. So I'm setting the stage for something interesting. Just bear with me. Finally, another side of the org chart. This is specifically for the core units. There's 17 bubbles over there. This is as well as I can put them all together. Every team works independently. Every team collaborates with other different teams, but there's no formalized agreements or anything on that side. Is organically, for example, my team is right over there. I end up working with oracles to expose their data. I work with the DAO protocol to do some analysis. It's a bit of a mess, but essentially this is kind of how the organization works. All right, to the points that I want to make today. I think people here either work at DAOs, know about DAOs, maybe some of them don't. But you do have concepts from traditional organizations that you can apply to what I've just shown you, the way we do things. So keep this in mind when I show you my pessimistic view of what's going on. And this idea of what decentralization means, what autonomous means, and figure out whether you think there's a better way of doing it, or the way we're doing it is incorrect and why. Okay, so my point here is how do you translate governance decisions into work that then goes into creating value? So I'm going to steal a couple of slides from a couple of colleagues of mine, but essentially let's say the theoretical approach. The theoretical approach is MKR holders have a decision, they have a vision, which comes down from consensus. This vision gets then translated down into strategy and implementation of it. You're not having the work that you can consider as projects in a way, and those projects are supposed to have an desired outcome. So, what are the tools for MKR holders to do this, to impact it? So for the governance process, we essentially have three main templates. Particularly these two are important, MID 40 and MID 39. This is the actions or the formal process by which you onboard a team to do work. And here you basically define the mandate. Data insights team will look at organizing data and exposing it to the public. You also vote on a facilitator. I am Tadeo, I have experience in this, I think I can deliver this. This is the way you can contact me. And third, a budget. Hire and need money, because I need to hire, I need to actually be able to deliver it. So this should be the foundational way that you do the translation between governance and ultimately value. You also have other mechanisms like MIG 55, that is essentially what we call a special purpose fund, which is a one-off. I'm asking for X amount of money to deliver this work. And you vote once, and that's it. Now, what ends up being kind of the reality of what we end up on this stage of the time? So this is the point of view of the MKR holder. MKR holders have very varied opinions. What things should be made. Should Maker work more on decentralizing itself, decentralizing DAI, making more censorship resistant, or should you look for scale, therefore go into real assets, get into permissioned assets? All of this is end up being, in a way, decided not really by the MKR holders, by basically core units. Because we value, in the organization, we value proactiveness a lot. So no, MKR holders didn't ask for a data team to exist. We came up, we suggested it, we explained what the value is and what the work will do, and they approved it. They're like, yep, go ahead and do it, have fun. Now, they come back a year later, we have a new budget, a new mandate. Hi, do you like what I did? Yes, okay, great. Then give me another year to do more stuff. Now, what happens that half a year later, someone asks me, what are you up to? What do you do? Well, in my case, I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of doing what I think I should be doing. So, well, what about this detail, this other detail? So basically, I'm just going to pass them off. You're just ordering me, I'm going to deliver the work. as an income holder, what do you know that can actually influence a decision or make a better decision than what I have, that I'm working there every single day on this. So what ends up happening is we end up creating a black box where we basically don't let anyone come in. Please stop worrying us, we're doing the actual work. The translation team work and value is often obfuscated. Everyone has their own way of showing their value. Look what I did, have a nice screenshot of a nice web UI, look at all the percentage increase of users I have had because of that, and then you move on. And then on the other side, from the core-unit perspective, what you have is you have an absent box, essentially. There's no vision, there's just people chatting on the forum and having very different opinions, by which you can't really follow all of them, or even a few, because there's no implementation of that idea. So we should be more decentralized. Great, how do you do that? Silence. So what core units have is basically no feedback. I can't go to the forum and I try to do this. Hi, we're doing data, we're doing this project. What do you think about this? What should we do? Open questions don't work. Again, we value proactiveness. I'm like, hi, this is the project that we're going to do. We're going to build data pipelines for layer 2 so everyone can see what's happening on Optimism and Arbitrum. Here's the amount of time it's going to take. Do you think it's okay? They're like, yeah, sure, why not? And you move on. So you have a bit of like this agreement between both sides how things work. So what ends up happening, this is again a bit of the pessimistic side, but what ends up happening in a bull market? In a bull market, we're not making good decisions because the conversation is really on this side. We get core units show up out of the blue, like we should be doing this thing. They get approved, based on the idea that we should be experimenting, that we should be seeking growth. So you shouldn't make decisions with information you have now. You have to first try it out, and then you see whether there's a positive impact or not. So as you can imagine, here you end up spending quite a lot of money, maybe even wasting it. On the bear market side, you go the other way. Governance swings the opposite side, and instead of just giving free money to everyone, goes and tries to cut everything. Offboard everyone. You look quite nice. Okay, I'm going to offboard you. It's like, you don't even know what I do. It's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. We just need to cover costs. Maker has been one of the few projects that actually has had a profit at some point in their time. So there's this point of, okay, we need to be profitable. So we cut everything. We don't engage in new projects. The market is moving. The market is evolving. There's new offerings in the site. Our competitors or partners are demanding different things. And what do we want to do? No, let's not do it. It's money. Don't want to spend money. So, not the ideal situation. And for this, I want to kind of, in 3 slides, show you the current, let's say, conundrums and challenges having an emotional level. One is information overflow. This is a point of view of not only the core unit, but also from the governance side. If you go on the Maker forum right now, every 10 minutes you can click refresh and you'll have 5 new posts happening. There's absolutely no human way for you to be on top of everything. How do you make informed decisions? How do you make sure that you're voting correctly on whether we should approve this investment deal in real estate? That we should change the interest rate of ETH, that we should fire this technical team that does data. Do we know what value do they bring? Who's actually consuming this data? The second point is, and again, it has to do with the mental models that we have when interacting with work. Either people that are cyberpunks or people that come from traditional finance or community members that have their own experience working in usually a centralized organization. Why is the point? At some point, you introduce so many bureaucratic steps. You can kind of look at the MakerDAO now and say, well, it's just a company. At the end of the day, there's one majority holder that makes most of the decisions. He's delegated it to a handful of people, so you have the executive body making those decisions, and then finally you have the workforce. So why do this whole thing? Just create a company, done with it. And ultimately, what we find at the DAO is that the thing that's, again, the most valuable thing, and we can have the same conversation about centralized organization, is that you just need to have an open communication and actually be coordinating, essentially. But the point is, you're optimizing an organization to be resilient, to take everyone's opinion into account. But then with the 100 opinions that you have, how do you make that decision? How do you arrive to an effective place where you can actually execute on it? So, very briefly, this is how I ended up. Stop worrying about the DAO and loving it instead. We'd love to hear your opinions of this. And actually, a really good point, and I saw on, where's Nick? There he goes. On the WhatsApp group, having conversations, someone was talking about the merits of the different stablecoins. It came out to die, and someone mentioned that they had an issue with how centralized the power was in the teams. And I'm really interested to know that opinion, because on my side, I feel it's a mess. It's not centralized at all. There's barely any power there. But again, you can find people with different opinions. So I'd love to open up to the debate.
Thanks for the presentation. I lost all my money thanks to MakerDAO. I still think it's one of the most decentralized and the best stablecoin there. But the discussions, the governance discussion after these events in March 2020 were looking exactly like central bank meetings, but with zero liable people. So I think it's really sad to. I'm not sad about my money. I'm more sad about how all of this looks like, and it's really like a bunch of people finally discussing about your money, but with zero liability. What would you say to this?
Wait, this works, right? Everyone can hear me? Cool. No, I agree. This idea of having this beautiful experiment where anyone can basically, in a way, show up and do work, ends up with a agglomeration of different people that have, first of all, different values, different ways of working. And I think what you end up having there is, let's say for chaos confusion, specifically for Black Thursday, when this is basically emergency happening, is you default to the known behaviors. So you default to thinking like a bank, to just a survival of a financial point of view. I mean, that essentially, basically, Black Thursday is the justice of COVID, everything crashed. And the integrated maker system is essentially the main assumption for it to work correctly is that we are able to liquidate collaterals effectively. Meaning that your one DAI is always worth $1 because we have the money in the bank to show for it. And in the worst case scenario, there's an emergency, we can give you crypto for the being worth $1. Here what happened is liquidations failed. So we actually had bad debt. So this assumption was broken. In order to remediate this, Maker allowed USDC to be used as collateral. And we come to the current situation where I think right now USDC backs around 80% of DAI in the system. The PSM was created, which is Peg Stability Module. Essentially, it's a one-to-one exchange of DAI, USDC, GUSD, and Paxos USD. Essentially, centralized stablecoins that we trust and say be allowed to redeem one-to-one against DAI. Again, USDC and all these are centralized stablecoins. Being that it's 80%, what is the point of DAI? Is it truly decentralized? Is it truly censorship resistant? I have arguments for both, but I'm veering too much from the question. It's a sad reality that in moments of crisis, without a established organization, you have these moments where it's just groupthink, and you end up again repeating, I think, a lot of like incorrect behaviors coming from traditional finance or other places.
Unfortunately, I don't see anything that was done to prevent this from happening the next time. It's not about collateral in USDC, it's about how decisions are made.
Yes, I agree. And actually, a big point that I didn't mention here is that at Maker we're going on this year, essentially, we are translating or reorganizing ourselves into what we call the endgame plan. I particularly don't like the word endgame because it feels it's very final and very negative. It's not. It's just a new iteration of MakerDAO. And the idea is to have that accountability. Having that, let's say if I am pushing for a under-collateralized real assets deal, I have skin in the game. I have reputation, I have money, I have everything there to make me accountable. I'm trying to solve this accountability.
Thanks. I have a question, like how DAO can hire real company. For example, if the DAO want to redesign everything, how it will be connected with, I don't know, any agency in not DAO world. I mean, in a real, who will be like sign contract, who will pay for this, not in crypto and other stuff. Can you explain a bit?
Yeah, but it's not that useful. But essentially, the current organization basically centralizes work with core units. So for that to happen, let's say an agency to be hired. So MakerDAO, the DAO protocol, doesn't have a legal entity. So it interfaces with the real world through the core units. So my core unit is a legal entity, engaging with just the ether. It's fun talking to lawyers and accountants about this. But essentially, with the micro unit hire this agency. And again, then it becomes just a normal legal entity relationship.
So we had a similar issue where our DAO secret agency is not a legal entity, but we need to both accept funds and also distribute funds to the rest of the world. So we actually looked at the Marshall Islands. We looked at Estonia first, but we ended up going with the Marshall Islands DAO framework. Has MakerDAO looked into that? You can actually wrap a DAO as a legal entity in its entirety via the Marshall Islands, and you can have stuff like a US bank account and conduct legal affairs as MakerDAO rather than.
So this is actually by design, that the DAO, the protocol itself doesn't have let's say a single legal entity. It's in favor of resiliency, essentially. You cannot be targeted. What you have is around now you probably have between core units, so you have 17 core units, meaning that you have 17 legal entities engaging with the system in some way or another. And then through real assets, we have separate entities for every single deal. So you're probably looking at around basically 30 legal entities that some way or another are used to interface between the Maker protocol and the real world system. Again, very inefficient, but we're trying to optimize for resiliency rather than efficiency.
Yeah, I guess in our case we're non-profit, so it's a different model.
We technically, depends what you ask, we're going against the governments.
I got a quick question for you, and maybe just anyone wanted to chime in on this, because I think obviously DAOs are becoming much more of a thing. You look at Maker, which I believe is one of the oldest DAOs around. You look at Gitcoin, and how in Milwaukee, and a number of them have started to get into quadratic funding, quadratic voting, which is really interesting, right? Because it's just putting more of it not only is it allowing you to cast a vote, but it's also putting a power behind that vote. And so that becomes really interesting. So if you had, let's say, $100 and one vote, because I think it's to the power of 2 when it comes to quadratic voting. So, or is 4? Right, exactly. So then if you had $100 and you one vote's going to give you 1 action, right? Whereas if you do $4, then that's going to give you 2 actions. So kind of depending on how much you care about a case, just shows that you've got more stake in the game. But something that I think is really interesting, and what we're going to start to see become necessary for DAOs, is risk mitigation. A good example might be if people are maybe familiar or not familiar with Nouns DAO. So to be part of Nouns DAO, you need to buy a noun. A noun is an NFT, it's a 721. Right now I think the floor is 60 or 70 ETH, which is not walk around money, it's a chunk of money. So you obtain a noun, and then you have the ability to cast a vote. right? So this becomes your action in order to cast a vote. Now, in order to, as you have MIPs, MIPs, right? There's BIPs, there's EIPs, there's just improvement proposals. It's how do we make this better, right? In order to cast a NIP for nouns, you need to have 2 nouns. So now you're in it, let's say 100, 120 ETH to then have an improvement proposal for this noun. Where I think it can get rather scary or tumultuous is looking at, let's say, the treasury behind it, right? Because now I'm going to put in $150,000, $200,000 because I believe in this project, but now what if it belly ups, right? Now there's no Chapter 11 bankruptcy, so now I've invested a tremendous amount of money into believing into this project that's going to allow me to ideally make it better, but then it could just be like totally swept under. So thinking about risk mitigation when it comes to DAOs, looking at the treasury, looking at the input in terms of how much money is flowing in versus how much money is flowing out is a tool I don't think we really have yet. And I'm just wondering if like anyone had, any, go for it, please.
Yeah, I'll rebound to that with co-founding a DAO here locally in Catalonia. We made an NFT fundraiser and we have funds in the treasury. And the treasury was a single signature wallet for a long time. So we faced huge amounts of risk there. And then to coordinate between, at the time, 60 or so DAO members just to make a multi-sig took several months. Whereas sometimes if you're a dev team of 3 people, you go, cool, you got keys, I got keys, awesome, let's go. So, I mean, I appreciate your model of MakerDAO because each separate entity is allowed to kind of be autonomous on itself, right? And then access the treasury through a MIP, right? But I think something you're alluding to there is also the risk of flash loan attacks, the risks of, an NFT is one thing, but if it's a fungible token like MakerDAO, someone could take billions of dollars, buy MakerDAO, make a proposal, and we've seen other DAOs being affected by flash loan attacks and then contract attacks too. So my interest here is like the resiliency also has to go beyond just the technology, it's also the people. Like if the certain exploits that we've seen last year were also people compromising their keys or being phished in social media, especially admins of Discord and stuff like this. So the DAO tooling has to go further in terms of security and not just design of a token, design of a protocol and process, but how does the human process go along with it?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I agree with you, but it's don't trust people, trust code.
And allow people to verify.
That's a very lonely existence.
I'm sorry?
It's a very lonely existence.
To rebound to this, like my point that I want to bring here is there's nothing new in DAOs. I mean, the newest part of DAOs is the blockchain. DAOs or decentralized organizations, then / autonomous organizations and / community groups or horizontal organizations, these are not new concepts. So don't go reinventing the wheel. I've been a proponent in ENS for many years and other places to say, use the tools from Spiral, for example, which is an organization that helps horizontal, decentralized organizations to function. They're not blockchain, but there's tools about human tooling and the way that people behave. Particularly, for example, if someone makes a proposal and is shot down by someone else in a very critical language, then you can have, emotional issues come from this. So never forget that even though you might be making a proposal or voting against it, there's actually a human on the other side of that. And that it's the humans that make the DAO, not the technology or the treasury or the tokens. So just wanted to bring that up there.
Paul? Yeah, so we're setting up our DAO governance at the moment. We're actually weighting it by contribution. So I think Jessa talked about an Airtable where they had different missions.
D-Work. Well, have you heard of D-Work?
No, I haven't.
D-Work? D-Work is great because instead of using Airtable, D-Work it integrates with Discord, and you can actually put all of the contributions that you're looking for people to use right in there, and then so it flows from. And then I think you can integrate that even with Utopia if you're paying people out. So like there's all of these. Yeah, sorry.
That's cool. We're using like our own community management system at the moment, but it definitely sort of takes those using tips. But yeah, governance by contribution. So the people that contribute the most to the DAO can have a higher sway, let's say. It's interesting.
Something that we're having at the moment, and I'll red team that point is, let's say, Mega has done this, where you give NPR or your governance token to your contributors. At the end, your earliest contributors will get a bigger share because they have more risk and the token is less valuable. So now you have a situation with with one of the co-founders is effectively having a outsized power over the protocol that, at least in the last previous years, was involved with. What is the, let's say, the value of having that person have that much power? Then my question is, for example, myself, I'm a facilitator. So I'm a mandated actor. I've been voted on by governance, and I direct budget into work. Should I be given voting power as well? And how much voting power? And is that voting power should be while I hold the position, or given to me as a password, basically it's forever?
I think traditionally you see people in your position get voting power, but maybe abstain from votes that concern themselves in their area of expenditure and distribution.
I think that's one of the hard parts for any DAO is honestly one of the biggest attack vectors is a governance token, right? Because to be honest, most of them don't have any value accrual mechanism. You could do dividends, you could do stock buybacks, but then it'd be a security, right? So I think that's one of the hard things of like maybe Maker holders don't have the same exact interest as DAI holders, right? Maybe someone that just buys a bunch of Maker shouldn't have an outsized vote to someone that actually uses DAI on a day-to-day basis. Maybe you should remove entirely a governance token and use the product in this case. Or something like Stake ETH Lido. LVO holders, like, motivation is to maximize their own profit. It's not to maximize the profit of STE holders. So I'm kind of curious to see, like, I do think there's a place for governance tokens in some projects, but I'm honestly kind of interested to see a next generation of DAOs where the product is the governance token, along with some reputation-based system based on people that are working on it, or using something like Restake ETH, right? So you can buy yourself in, but at least it has real value. If you like fuck over, die, ETH is gonna suffer, right? And yeah, that's what I'm curious to see in the future, because I consult on a DAO project, and honestly, it's hard to solve, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Something that makes me think about this is that Maker never did a liquidity mining program. Basically, never incentivized the growth of the project with its own token, which has its benefits and challenges. Again, our growth has been organic compared to, for example, with Aave, which is great. But then Aave, by doing this program, has effectively distributed governance into their actual users. We haven't done that. So to your point, DAI users don't have a say in Maker directly, not even vault owners, which you could argue are one of the core participants in our system. And just extending myself on this, one of the current delegates at some point wrote that governance tokens have negative utility. Because when you buy it, then you have to go and do the work to actually vote to increase it. Which is actually quite brilliant, I think quite precise. And his follow-up point was this: given that it has negative value, the only logical reason to buy a governance token is to be able to extract value from that project into yourself. So you end up incentivizing the worst kind of actors in this project to actually make decisions not for the betterment of the protocol, but for the results.
I got a fun story. The ENS token, right? People can go find it. You can go ask for the thing, and if you query the distribution of the tokens, you'll see that something like 23%, maybe less now, is on Coinbase. Coinbase.eth controls a lot of those because they obviously registered a stupid amount of domains or very early on. I don't know. So progressively, I've been losing money the last year and a half DCAing into a governance token. Why? So I can decentralize my DAO. So I'm losing wealth, I'm going to use air quotes, by buying a token and restaking it with smaller delegates just to decentralize the power of my own organization. And these are the kind of altruistic actions I think all DAOs need. Like, it's not all about profit maximization. I mean, if your DAO is a DeFi DAO that's trying to make a certain fund for some reason, okay, I can understand it's all about the euro value or the ETH value. but there's a real value in actually having a decentralized, distributed organization with equalized voting power. And I have no shame in saying that I've lost a bunch of ETH or thrown away a bunch of ETH into a token that, technically speaking, has lost its value. But it's still present, and even if it goes to zero, I'll still use it to vote. So I don't think anyone in their mind should equate a governance token with the dollar value of that token on the market and or their main chain equivalent. So in the ENS case, the Ethereum.
And I'll counter that point with TakerDAO. So TakerDAO is kind of a joke on Twitter, but it's essentially a proposal to essentially accumulate NPR enough to actually pass an executive vote that basically takes all the collateral and you can run away with it. So we have now about, I think it's like 6 billion of DAO in circulation. It's probably being backed by, I'm going to lie and say like 8 billion probably, because mostly stablecoins 1-to-1. The governance token the market cap is way less. I think it's like, it hasn't reached a billion. So basically, like if you accumulate less than a billion, you can get away with 8 billion. So why don't you?
But the greatness of that is that by doing TakerDAO, or whoever's doing this, you're actually raising a point about resiliency of your protocol. So if MakerDAO can pass this TakerDAO phase or takeover, whatever you want, you will be a more resilient protocol from it. And I think that's the real test of anything, including Bitcoin, including Ethereum in itself. Like, people need to poke holes in the thing. And I mean, cool, how can I join TakerDAO?
Is it a secret chat?
Oh, the secret chat. Well, is that a secret network?
Out of curiosity, when it comes to, I think most all DAOs, essentially, including like Maker and like everyone I can think of who I'm part of, essentially rely on like two platforms, right? It's going to be the forum in which IPs are proposed, and then it's going to be Discord. And I just can't help but think that there's just an incredible amount of reliance on Discord, and that's giving Discord just like a tremendous. And Discord has gone down in the past for hours at a time, or sometimes like a day. But do you think that there's any concern with like a lot of what's happening when it comes to these communications with DAOs is happening on like a single platform?
Short answer, yes. Slightly longer answer is it's a matter of priority. What to worry about? There's a lot of things to worry about. I used to worry a lot about this. At some point, I have bigger fish to fry. But is this conundrum of a decentralized organization, or an organization that is trying to optimize for resiliency? And you can take that concept wherever you want, and then using a single point of failure. So we have our forum, which is the main, like let's say, formal way of communicating and making proposals, run on a single server in AWS by a single team. How resilient is that? And to your point about Discord, it's also the same thing. It's like, to what extent are we really resilient if 100% of the application happens for days that they can just centralize one day, or like can break down? And we have documentation of what to do in emergencies, but whether that can effectively translate into implementation is a completely different ballgame. We used to use open source chat client called Rocket Chat.
Yeah.
Again, problem, it's hosted yourself in a server in Amazon. And we transitioned to Discord because it's difficult enough to onboard into Maker and contribute into Maker. Let's just make it a little bit easier and go Discord. I personally haven't seen any value from pushing to Discord. Like, if someone wants to be part of Maker, they just download Rocket Chat. We could just get refters and just random people that we want to ban, and that's it. But yeah, no, but wait, it's even worse. Like, my team, I use Google services, I use private databases. At what point, like, are we really that resilient?
No, I totally. The same for me as well. Like I use all those services. I use everything that's like centralized and on a single point of entity constantly. And like I think about this a lot. Like, it just seems like I don't know. You can like fall into this like nebulous state of like trying to figure out like I'm like really pushing toward this, and maybe you have something like like Lens or like Loom, right? Built by Abe, I think. But to what extent is that really like so decentralized as well? So, because everything is mostly like hosted on like AWS, right? And so it's just like, if you stop paying the bill, what happens? But I don't want to stray too far away from the DAO. So I just wanted to kind of talk about how most all DAO interactions primarily happen on Discord. And it's just like it just seems like it could be a bit scary.
But you can look at the other side and say, okay, let's optimize for true resiliency in our tooling. Let's use as much open source decentralized tooling as possible. Oh, I'm getting the cut. My last one is you can do that, but then you make it so difficult to interact. Let's say it all has to be based on the signal, and you have to have a big phone. And to your point about individuals contributing and this idea of having a reputation is, let's all do it fully anonymous so that we are more resilient. Cool. How do I check that you are doing, that you know how to do what you're telling me to do, or that you're the same person I was speaking to the other day? Do you really want to spin up each one of us having a server? So, I mean, we go tomorrow on orbit. We can spin up our own planets, have someone run a galaxy, have connections there. It's just how difficult is it to contribute? Desirable, right? We want to scale, not only that, but also the organization.
That's a good point.
Yeah, for more philosophical questions, you can be here all day.
Sorry, guys, we're gonna have to interrupt. Carry on the questions like now, I guess. Socializing, networking. We have George here. You're gonna play some tunes for us. As in sound. And we have another talk in 2 minutes from Elena, but we need a centralized platform. Thank you, Tadeo, for your talk. And,